Hello everyone, Kenty Tiger here with Bengali Engineering in Play. We are back in Space Engineers. We're continuing on, I think, with the basic survival tutorial series. Um, a couple things have happened since the last video of this nature anyway. Um, so I got to the end of the last video, as you guys saw, and crashed. I've spent actually quite a few days trying to determine the nature of that crash um, and do some troubleshooting, figure out what happened, seeing if I can prevent it. The answer is to all of the above, no go. So I have not been able to determine what happened. I can't quantify the problem without it consistently showing up, and it's not consistently showing up. So I thought I had discovered a few things and recreated, and no. So um, the crashes I thought were environmental related, uh, then recreated these environments, then eliminated mods, added mods, one at a time to try and figure out, or three or four at a time. Tried to figure out what was going on, couldn't figure out what was going on. Discovered a few bugs as I went, and uh, I, I can't really explain to you why I'm not going to put in uh, a bug thing about it, because I just the bug fixes and everything. I don't know how to phrase this. To me, quality control is really really important for a company that's putting a product out there. This is a game, yes, but it is a product. It is a commodity. It's something that we paid for as a community. Um, so why we are the quality assurance troubleshooters for this product, I'm not really sure, and I don't agree with that at all. Um, Part of putting the product out is quality assurance, so why isn't Keen uh, able to do their own quality assurance? One of their problems, apparently, is that the programmers don't actually play the game. So they can't see these problems when they show up. They can't fix them when they show up because they don't know about them. They don't have, again, apparently, a quality control department at all. Um, so they don't even know about these problems because they don't play the game. They don't see them for themselves. And they leave it to the community to do the troubleshooting for them, which is to say the trouble identification for them, and then they go forward from there. Now, I know that's a bit unfair because I don't work for Keen, but I see a lot of issues that to me are very, very simple, very upfront issues, which should not exist, but do. So, again, my take on the thing. So, anyway, I've been running for about 2 hours now, give or take, and successfully, no crashes, so semi-stable. I am back up to running alt max. Um, so right now it's working. Okay, so this was our satellite that we demonstrated. Now I've altered the satellite in two aspects that are completely non-vanilla. One is the build and repair system, so the nanobot build and repair system, which you can find online on the workshop. Um, why did I add these in? Well, um, normally what I would do is do a series about building the miner. Now, I already did a tutorial about building a drone miner, uh, reasonably good sized miner. It was a 4 drill miner. Um, it works. It does what it was intended to do, does what it was designed to do. Now I've modified that a little bit, which is to say I created a contraption that I bolted onto its butt end, and then we went from there. So having said that, um, I tried to build the miner by putting a projector up, discovered that there was a lot of blocks I couldn't weld. Why couldn't I weld them? The spirits only know. If I moved to a particular place, then I could weld it. If I was right on it, I couldn't weld it. So it's one of these, again, frustrated the hell out of me, so I just decided, okay, I can't weld, so I'm going to let the build and repair system weld it, which I did. So rather than, I really wanted to do an episode on building the miner. I kind of already did that, so it would be a little bit redundant. So I guess I'll just save my time, my airtime, and not do that. So what have I done to the station? Well, I added the build and repair system on there. Why did I do that? Because I got frustrated as hell trying to build. What was the other thing that I did? Well, moving materials back and forth, while a very realistic part of the game, in fact, a very fantastic aspect of survival, is I mine, I have raw materials, then I have to get those raw materials back to the station, in this case, and get them into the refineries. So we have the 2 refineries here. We just have the one the one assembler up there. We actually have quite a spattering of materials, of components to use. So what's all this gibberish down here? Well, these are the 2 bottom ports for the refineries. So these are just connected down here underneath. Why did I do that? Because there's one on the side. I have a container here that I am using specifically for the teleporter, which is here. What is the teleporter? PACAS, not sure how they pronounce their name. They had, as far as I know, 2 mods. One was about energy transmitting, so you basically could transmit energy from one grid to another without that grid being connected. So kind of based on the philosophy of Tesla, Nikola Tesla. For those of you who aren't familiar with Tesla's work and inventions, I do highly recommend that you read something about him, especially if you're a science buff. The other, actually, I guess there's 2 mods that are basically based on the same thing. So there was a global mod that PACAS had that was kind of everything. It was their global mod, so you could transmit energy, and I think you could transmit materials. Then there was 2 other mods. That one was a cargo transmitter that was based on antennas. So basically, your antenna length, which is to say the distance that your antenna is set at, it becomes the limit of the transmit. I found that to be fairly realistic, so that's the one that I have adopted to use. There's another one that's unlimited, and while that's all fine and dandy, I don't use that one because it's unlimited. I like a little bit of realism, so I think having definitive limits such as antennas or distance based on antennas is a very realistic balancing mechanism. So what does this thing do? This thing receives and puts it into this box, this teleporter, this cargo container down here, small cargo container, and then the refineries here can pull that material out. Now, why did they do that? So, for those of you, and sorry I'm munching here. For those of you who recall, the drone miner did not actually have a container. Why is that? Because the drills are actually the size, inventory-wise, of a medium container. So you really don't need a container when you build a small drill platform. So what I did was I wanted a way to do a bit of mining, and so here's what we have. Is the miner, which you see in the front of the hole here, or the back of the hole, the base of the hole, the bottom of the hole, whatever you want to call that, attached onto the connector is a connector, duh. There's a medium container, and I actually did the medium container because I needed to name. So the way these cargo transmitters work is you need a transmitter and you need a container on both ends. And the idea is that the container here, so let's call this remote, the remote container is actually going to be referenced on the receiver, which is on the other end. So in this case, the station. So I have my standard programming when I'm setting these things up is I'm consistent. So all of my builds use the exact same programming for all of these, which is to say the configuration. So this container is called cargo transmit, cargo xmit. Bolted in front of that, I suppose I can get a little closer here. So obviously here's the container. Sorry, the connector, rather, the other C word. Then the container. So this is just standard medium container here. This is the cargo transmitter, so the cargo teleporter, for a small grid. So it looks much like a sorter. It's based on a sorter. It actually does sorting function even. Then I bolted a battery on, and then I put a seat on it, because this drone miner actually does not have a seat. There's no way to control it without remoting into it, and that's still the case. And because there could possibly be the potential of not having this connected onto a device with an antenna, it has an antenna. It absolutely needs an antenna to do what it does. All right. So having said all that, one of the things that we need to do is mine, and mining is a bit tedious because all right, this is back to my camera not working. Okay, T to jump in, V not working at all. Okay, the camera view no longer functions. Alright, so fuck it. That wasn't a Space Master issue. I know I have clearly that's set up. I'm a long ways from everything. Alright, I don't know what the fuck is going on there, but RC, we are taking control of that particular device. Again, this wonky camera crap that has always been a part of the game. So trying to get myself back into approximately the same hole here. Alright. So I think I am back in control of the drill, back in control of the camera. So what does the teleporter do? Cargo teleporter. So if we think about that in terms of the title, what it says on the tin, then we jump into inventory and see if we can demonstrate what's going on here. Hide empty. So we have a little bit of stone in a connector, which I think is the connector on the ship itself. And I don't know why it's staying there per se. So let me see if we can get it to move on and put it somewhere else. So those are the drills taking in material, and you see the material is disappearing. One of the challenges of this particular where was I going with all that? If we look at, I guess let's go ahead and just look at, so the cargo teleporter, even though it's full of stone, is still actually semi-functional. But let's look at cargo. Oh, because cargo transmit is empty at the moment. Alright, so let's move forward again, start drilling, and it will be pulling in material here very slowly. Right now we're doing iron, so let me see if I can actually find. So you can see it's pulling in material from the drill and it's vanishing. That's because it's being transmitted to the other end and pulled in. So what this really saves me from doing is my drills never fill up, or I can't say never, because if you really truly tax them, then it would. It's being transmitted to the other side, received, pumped into that small container, and then the refineries can pull the media in, whatever the minerals happen to be, and process them. So that's what this thing is intended to do. So the miner, in this case, is pulling in these raw materials. So what these teleporters enable me to do is to be a lazy bum, and I just can fly the miner. I don't have to worry about going back and forth. I don't have to worry about collecting all this material and transmitting it to the other end, because my transmitters, my teleporters actually do that for me. So it's another way of saving time in the game, of normal survival stuff, that you have automated mechanisms now that help you do those things. So that's really what this is about. So I'm still mining, but I can actually have equipment now transmit everything that I am mining back to the station to be processed, and I don't have to be jumping back and forth and wasting all that time. So all I need to do is focus on mining. Of course, I'm kind of banging into things here because this has way too much dust. Take a little while, but mine right down to the center. Every 20 meters we change materials. So the next material here should be uranium. Now, other than the contraption that I've bolted onto the back of this miner is completely vanilla. So there's no extra parts here that are beyond the vanilla game. Obviously, this contraption that I bolted on here has a couple of non-vanilla items, or really one non-vanilla item, which is that teleporter. As long as I don't get too crazy, then I end up with no ramming into the materials. I just have to be careful, and I can't go too fast. Obviously, mining is a fairly slow process. So every 20 meters, I think I said already, is a change in substrate, change in materials. This was a manufactured asteroid, so obviously this isn't going to be consistent with all the asteroids. This particular asteroid is 250 meters across. The outer shell is stone, then it goes to iron, then to ice, as you can see here, then to uranium, which we're drilling through now. And I forget what the next one is. It might be nickel. And then we have a cobalt. And then there's silver, the gold. So basically everything that we need is actually in this particular asteroid. So even though it looks like, I think this is nickel that I'm drilling through now, even though you see a lot of debris coming out of this is now just graphics elements that actually look pretty nice, but they don't seem to affect performance hardly at all. this one is nickel, so I'm not sure what that one is. Silicon is what that one. So I hit silicon first, and then this is nickel. One of the things I did not set up on this miner that I usually set up on my miners is maneuvering thrusters. I like setting up maneuvering thrusters because it gives you that fine point control. And having that fine point control is not just for mining, but docking. So having a capability where you can just use a very minimal amount of thrust is convenient. So one of the things that I didn't do on this miner, mostly because I was keeping it basic. But okay, now we're into magnesium, I believe. So let's do an inventory just for fun. So magnesium definitely, and we are still transmitting that cargo out. Oh darn. So the colors, when they did this big voxel mod change, changed a little bit. I'm not necessarily boring in a straight line either, so as in directly towards the center. So I'm not sure if I just scrape the surface of the material here and then I'm into the next. I'm not sure. I don't know what the green is. The blue, I think, is cobalt. The real trick with mining is just to be very patient. Let the drills work. Thrust very slowly, and they do what they do. Different color, I think this is silver. I think gold and platinum are in the center. So the voxels really only update once a second. So, game mechanic thing, you have to wait for those voxels to update. So, use your thrust judiciously. That's another reason why I put those maneuvering thrusters on there, because it gives you that fine point control, which you don't have otherwise with all of your thrusters running. Starting to see gold. Good news here is with this one mining run, then I will be able to have some of all the different mineral types, which means I should be able to draw from that and have really access to any material, any component that I need. Because as long as I have all of the different materials and they've all gone through and I have, you know, how do I want to say that? Raw materials into ingots. So as long as I have the usable material, then I should be able to make any component required, which is really what the goal at this point is. Your basic survivability, again, once you have met those basic four, then it becomes a function of what do you need to build what you want. Which just takes time. So in this case, we build the miner, which I'm borrowing a miner, and we go from there. So one of the things that I want to do, and I'm going to continue on in the series with that philosophy, is a big miner, which is to say a large grid miner. Why do I want a large grid miner? Mostly because of the quantity. So if you take this miner, if you see this 5x5 grid, so a 5x5 grid is basically one block for a large grid. So in the front here, I'm 7 wide to put a perspective on it. So my drills actually are a gap of 1 in between, and because the drills are a 3x3 and they mine in a 3x3 grid, then that 1 in between, or really it's about 4, because you've got a half on each side, give or take, half a block. So between the 2 drills being 1 block apart, you actually drill that portion as well, so you can have a 1 block gap in the middle and not have an issue. So in this case, we have something that's just slightly larger than a single large block drill. But there's 4 drills up there. So having a large or larger miner would help us with the speed at which we can mine. So I see the color change, that's platinum, which is the last of the material types that we are mining to. I'm obviously coming at somewhat of an angle here, and I'm not sure if I have just really gone completely wonky in my direction, or if this was just because this is where I chose to start drilling. Definitely at an angle. As you can see how I've got platinum there on the right side of my mine shaft here. It's still gold in center and left. Mining in this game is one of those, patience requiring things. I know I mentioned patience already, but mining is a little bit tedious. I mean, it's another one of those watching grass grow things. It's something that's absolutely necessary. You have to get raw materials to be able to make the materials you need. So it's one of those things where having a good miner is pretty important. Now, when you're just starting, having a small miner is fine. It can get you where you need to go. But if you are really, truly, like, I need to build a station, for example, or something like that, then it becomes a little bit more, I want to say problematic, because you need these large scale inventories of stuff. And of course, that does, in some ways, become a function of container. We have 6 large containers back at the satellite. All right, so I think we're mining back out into gold, which means we can turn our drills off now. That wasn't too bad. Whoops. Okay. Not sure what that funky line thing is, but oops. I'm going backwards, so I have to reverse. When I'm trying to control, I have to reverse everything, which is kind of weird. We'll do a T. And the things I'd like to be able to do is touch on that, but I can't because all right. So kind of demonstrating here what this thing can do as far as capabilities and all that. Attach on, and so the connector now has some iron in it. Not a big deal, but and the cargo teleporter also has material in it. Kind of one of the problems with I'm not sure if that is a function of control panel. Is that a function of this on? So the problem is this is keeping this material here instead of pulling it in. Not sure why it's doing that. Okay, so having demonstrated this thing and what the intentions were, then I'm going to go ahead and let me go ahead and go back into Space Master. So actually, no, I'll just fly this over and we'll dismantle it. So let me grab this. So everything in this case is I don't know why this stuff does not work intelligently, but remote control. station here. That would be bad. It's like for those of you who ever took music, um, it's one thing playing your instrument in the key it was intended to play in, but there's this thing called transposing. I don't know how many of you have studied music and are fully aware of transposing, but if you're playing a single note instrument like a clarinet or trumpet or something like that, then transposing in many ways is just part of playing. But being able to read one note, translate it in your head, and play another note, which is really what transposing is about, is a challenge. And of course, after you get used to it, even though it's still kind of a challenge, it's just that it's like driving a car. Once you're familiar with it and it becomes second nature, then it's not nearly as challenging, and it is second nature. So to put that redundantly. But let's take a different instrument like a piano, where you could have anywhere from one note to, if you're pretty good and you have the finger span to do it, 12 notes at a time. So try to transcribe 12 notes at a time versus transcribing one, and that's where I ran into a problem. I was a pianist and organist, so definitely had some trouble transcribing. So transcription, interesting stuff. I have no idea how I got onto that subject, but hey, there you go. So there's a little beastie. All right, if everything is configured correctly, which I hope it is, then we are 313.2. Yes. Sorry, that was a P. Because I very seldom use yellow. 313.2 and 100. So that's my grind color. So here's what we're going to do with this little thingy. Control, Shift, and center mouse button will paint everything and start dismantling. And we're going to do the same thing with our drill. How grinding does stuff like that, I really truly don't know. I think it's an interpretive of physics, which is, translating force into movement. But so the other really neat thing about this build and repair system is when you have containers, for example. Now we're back to the flashy. The containers, I'm going to do a Control F5 or Shift F5 here, which thankfully does pretty good to get rid of the flashy. if you have a container that has stuff in it, just grinding it down, of course, leaves that material to just float wherever. The build and repair system, actually, when you're grinding down containers, will take all of those materials out and then grind down the container. So it's actually a very efficient, effective mechanism. In contrast, the nanite control factory, it does somewhat the same thing but backwards. So what happens is it grinds down the box itself, the container itself, and then all of those materials would be out, and then one of the auxiliary functions of the nanite control factory is it will pick up everything that's floating, which happens to be all the materials that were in that container. So I find the build and repair system to be a little more efficient in how it does that function, because it takes the stuff out first, so it cannot escape from you. It can't fall into the world. It can't do anything but go to the build and repair system. And so again, if there's any singular greatest plus about the build and repair system, is it's much smaller. So you can see there's actually 6 of them here. Let me go up and we'll do the look down on it. There's actually 6 of them, all 6 right here. So these were the first 2 to go in right here, which was on this conveyor, which connects into obviously my containers. So those 2 were there. There's a port on both sides and the bottom. And so I just stuck 2 more on here. And because sides, right, then I stuck 2 more there. So that's really what this was all about. And technically I could grind those elbows down and put 2 more, swivel them sideways and put 2 more, so we could have a total of 8 here. And I may actually end up doing that just because. So the next goal, I think, is to build a much larger miner, which is really to say a large grid miner. And we have not done that on video yet, so I think we'll take the opportunity to do that and build a much larger miner. I did do kind of a demonstration with a large scale miner. So the intention here is to probably have like a 5x5 front grid instead of something that's huge, maybe even a 7x7 grid, which I think will be fairly practical. So quick save, and I think even though I'm a few minutes early, which really never happens, I've kind of finished the topic, which was really kind of to get you introduced slightly anyway to mining, and that was a small miner. There is a video on building that miner, or actually a video series on building that particular miner, deep down into the YouTube site there. And I think I actually put that up on that particular miner up on the Steam Workshop, because it is vanilla. So having said that, I think I'm gonna do a dinner, and that means Kenty Tiger is signing off to go slobber on his plate. We'll see you all next time.